Welcome to Open Lid, the podcast from Honens where we dive deep beneath the keys and beyond the stage to uncover the stories, ideas, and artistry that shape the world of piano. I'm your host, Canadian pianist Philip Chu, and I'm so glad you're here because together we're going to explore conversations with artists, thinkers, and creators who remind us what it means to be a complete artist. This podcast is made possible with the generous support of Jeremy Clark and Yuanfan Financial. So, if you're ready, let's lift the lid and begin. My guest today is Sir Stephen Hough, a rare artist whose accomplishments in any single field are rivaled only by the breadth of his interests. Concert pianist, composer, painter, writer, thinker. It's no exaggeration to call him one of our most influential and compelling artists. Beyond his extraordinary pianism, his essays, and even tweets, offer candid, thoughtful takes on music, art, politics, and pudding. Yeah, pudding, like sticky toffee. And let's be honest, he is probably one of the most interviewed pianists on the planet. He's also got 4 books in his back pocket that he's written. Music, politics, religion, myriad others, anything else. Basically, go do a quick Google. You can find him talking about all that stuff. For the brief time I have with Stephen today, I want to cut straight to the heart of what matters here at Honens, his perspective on the mindset that our competitors will need, his role as their mentor, and the world that awaits them once the competition lights fade. Sir Stephen, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm well, Phil. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you. What made you accept the role as the mentor for our Honens competitors? You know, I've read now some of your interviews and heard you speak, and that in a way, and I'm paraphrasing, you almost find it a bit icky. You find it a tricky thing being a mentor, if I understand correctly.
Well, it sounds like I have answers to something. Now, I'm not sure that I do, but I think actually that awareness is maybe what you want from a mentor. At least I feel in my own life, people who've been mentors to me. I don't want someone who has all the easy answers, but I want someone who can listen to the questions and work through some of them with me. And that's what I hope I'll be able to do with the competitors this time. It's, of course, as we all know, there are many competitions. There's probably one going on right now as we speak, and many winners and not that many concerts out there for people to do, and tremendous pressure, more so even than when I was beginning, because you have the whole world of social media. You know, how much of all of this is about how well you play, but how much is how good your photos look or how witty you can be on Instagram or any number of different pressures. So I feel for these young people, and I think Honens does too. It's always been a competition which has looked at the depth both of an artist and of a career, a long-term look. This is not about quick fixes. And so I think this is already the most fantastic start. So I don't know what I'll have to offer. I'll be there. I'm sort of a resource that people can use as they want to. And also, yes, I think as you sort of mentioned there, it's what happens after the competition. What's the next stage? You know, if you're talking about a 40-year, 50-year career, what does that involve? How much repertoire do you need? You know, can you be too available, not available enough? You mentioned about giving lots of interviews. I mean, you know, maybe you can say too much. I've certainly had a sense that I don't mean in what you say, but how many times you say it. So, you know, sometimes I've done a number of interviews and found myself giving the same answers. And I thought, well, how many times can I tell people about my Aunt Ethel and her piano when I was 5 years old? And, you know, are people still going to be interested in this? So all of these things.
How do you prepare your students for a competition? And what do you see as the role of competitions in students' lives these days? Or not even just students, but early career musicians?
I had a student at Juilliard. He said to me, could I write him a letter of reference to a competition? And I think there were 3 he wanted. And I said, well, of course I will. But do you want to win? And he looked at me slightly astonished, really. And I said, well, you know, it's not like the Olympics. Winning is not like getting a gold medal and there we are. There's the achievement. Winning a competition means your diary next year will have 100 concerts in it. Do you want that? How many concertos can you offer? We were sitting actually in Vader Kaplinsky's studio, which overlooked Lincoln Center. And I pointed at the New York Philharmonic office. I said, okay, so they love you. So which concertos would you offer them? So he was thinking, and maybe he had 2 or 3. I said, but what if those don't work? And what if they like you so much they want you to come twice? So it's the practical side of it. Are you ready? And of course, none of us are really ready, but is this the life you want? Do you want a life for the next 20 years of being on the road, of living out of a suitcase, of dealing with hotels and cancelled flights and nerves and podcasts like this and streaming and video? Is that the life you want? And he thought very carefully and he said, I'm actually not sure. And then fast forward a few years, I just saw him in New York last year. I mean, he's a great guy. And he said, I think back to that, and actually, I really don't want that sort of life. And I said, that doesn't mean you're less of a musician, less of a pianist. It's just some people actually don't want to do that. And I totally respect that. It's not like you're doing a second best. So that's something I think the people coming out of a competition also need to decide what they really want to do with their life. Don't allow this life to take you where you don't want to go. If you don't want to play so many concerts a year, then make that decision and don't be bulldozed into doing it. Because in the end, if we don't look after our health, physical and mental, no one else is going to. So we really need to do that.
You've already referenced now about social media and the availability that an artist needs to be to the public, to an interested public, and to the industry. You've also spoken about how one can become too personal or reveal too much, even though the industry wants that.
Well, the title of my memoir is Enough. In other words, I said only as much as I wanted to say. So there's a lot that I left out. I think one needs to be careful. I do think sometimes people reveal too much. I've never spoken on Instagram if I've been ill, for instance. I don't know. I never want to judge anyone else because everyone should make their own rules about these things. I really feel when I'm playing for an audience, they've come to hear me play the piano. I don't sing. I don't speak. I'm just bringing music to them. And I think music is one of the few things in life that can transcend differences between us, whether they're religious differences, social differences, political differences. When I'm playing a Beethoven sonata, we can all share that together. Everyone is welcome at my concert. I'm happy to have Republicans and Democrats and everything to the left and the right. And
vegans and carnivores.
I love vegans. Yes, anyone is welcome. And I think there aren't many places in life now where that's true. Afterwards, perhaps we can have a discussion and talk about things. But during the concert, I really like to keep things with a bigger perspective. We're playing music. I mentioned Beethoven, 200 years old. This music is not just for everyone who lives now. It's across the centuries. This is another wonderful thing about classical music is that we're all brothers and sisters over decades and centuries. And to me, that's something also very special.
You've spoken about practice as a perfectionist, but in performance, you're a realist, or that in practice, you're kind of an engineer, and performance, you're a pilot. How do you coach your students through this practice?
The idea of improvisation, I think, is extremely important. Not that I'm a terrible improviser, but I think being aware that that's where a lot of composers drew their inspiration from. They were all, it seems, brilliant improvisers. No one less than Beethoven, because he was known as an improviser more than as a composer when he was living in Bonn. He was this incredible person who could make up things. Of course, Mozart famously and Mendelssohn, they were all amazing improvisers. Liszt, Chopin, I love that remark of Georges Sand that someone was saying how wonderful the Chopin's ballades were, and she says, well, you should have heard the ones he improvised. They were even more how sad we didn't hear those. But I think this is very important. So I think all the ballades open as if an improvisation. So again, we come to the fourth ballade, the opening. If we're over reverent, how am I going to play? How am I going to voice this and everything else? If you say, well, imagine that G has been going on for at least a few bars before you come in onto the scene.
Right.
So it's going on in the room. You open the door and you join the narrative of this ballade and where it's going to unfold. Again, those opening bars, who's to say it's going to be a tragic piece at that point? It seems perfectly benign. It's a sort of F major-ish thing. It's Chopin just improvising some things, and it comes to a stop, and there's a pause, and then he takes the C and holds it. And then the D flat. So we're not going to be in the major, perhaps. Then the B. Well, that's very strange. And then, of course, we have this tune that's so sad and so nostalgic and so on. And the point is, if you're telling a story to people, you are telling them in real time. So they don't know what you're going to tell them next. And this, to me, is a very important way of being an actor, as we are in music, that you don't give the game away, that you go with the audience in real time so that they experience the shock and the surprise of the story, and you do it for, even though you know what's happening, you have to pretend not to.
I get the feeling you're still very happy playing hundreds of concerts a year. How do you sustain that?
I enjoy a lot about it. It's a mental illness playing concerts, frankly. It really is. You can't be a totally balanced human being and have a career. You need to be, like actors, constantly creative so that you're standing in the wings to play a concerto you've played 100 times, and it has to seem to you like the most exciting thing you've ever done, because that's one of the skills you need to have a career. It's not so much being able to play the piano well or even have good musical ideas, but to have that kind of energy that you get to the piano and you're on fire every night.
What do you miss most when you're on the road?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I think just the possibility of a kind of routine. So I worked very, very hard during COVID. I decided from the very beginning that if I gave up and treated it like a vacation, I would fall apart. So I was at my studio every day, certainly by 10 a.m., and I worked all the way through till 6:30. And my partner also was working, and then we would meet at home and order in food. I haven't cooked for 23 years, so there's no cooking going on, but order in food and watch TV. Although at the beginning, I imagined we'd catch up on all those great films that I'd never seen, the art house things from France and Germany. We ended up just watching box sets, and it was great. And I fell in love with 24, the series, and I watched that every single.
It's a great series. It's
a great series. Yeah,
it does exactly what it promises to do. I mean,
totally. And I was white knuckled on the edge of the seat, just waiting for the next episode. So I miss a little bit of the routine when I'm on the road.
Is there a particular skill or trait that you find students are missing these days that you wish you could sort of impart on all of them?
Oh, I don't think these days are any different from any other day, really. In fact, I think students these days are fantastic. I suppose it's for all of us. It's not just students. It's concentration, I think, is slightly under attack because of the possibility of scrolling and of looking things up or ordering things online that arrive the same day. And this kind of sense of the lack of patience, the lack of attention. Simone Weil, the French philosopher, wrote about attention as a kind of prayer, that the ability to actually focus on something. And I think I never watch TV in hotels. I made a sort of rule about it when I started playing, because I had a couple of nights of just scrolling through in a hotel room somewhere in Nebraska or whatever. And it was so depressing. And I thought, this isn't a good use of time or energy, not even the news. I just don't turn on the TV. Now, I can't say I don't look at YouTube or Twitter or whatever. It's something about just sitting in front of the TV. I do at home, but when I'm on the road, I try not to. And I think that's something that I think helps me to have attention in some ways. But it's we're always working on these things. There's no perfect way.
What about a critical skill for early career musicians?
Being nice to conductors. Or at least not being obnoxious. I think, well, actually, it is a serious point, because I said the careers are made up of all sorts of things. And of course, there's playing the piano, there's being a great musician, there's knowing the background of the music. And then there's something more serious that we spoke about having this charism and this kind of fire within. But then there are superficial things that are also important. Actually being pleasant on a tour goes a long way, because an orchestral manager who's putting together an orchestral tour and trying to deal with all these musicians getting to the airport on time or whatever else, if you sort of are fussy and, the banana isn't ripe enough or something like this, it doesn't go down well. And actually, on a tour, it's quite important that there's a good atmosphere around, because it really helps the concert to be good or not. So I would say being pleasant and patient go a long way in the musical world.
I think about our listeners of the podcast. How would you describe for them what they're going to witness over these 10, 11 days at Honens?
Well, I mean, by the time we get to the final candidates, that we have people, all of whom could have careers on any stage in the world. That's the thrilling and slightly daunting thing about piano competitions now. There are so many wonderful young players. It's uncanny how you can tell, even though there are hundreds who can play all of the Chopin etudes perfectly and so on. But when you hear something wonderful, you really hear it. And it's something to do with that charisma, I think. And I think it's this compelling that somebody forces you to listen, because you really want to hear what they have to say, and you can disagree with it. I can hear playing that I really don't like in a sort of objective way, and yet I'm very happy to listen to them. And this is something that, as a jury member, is very important. You're not looking for someone who's a carbon copy of you, or someone who does the things you like to do or think are important. You're looking for someone with a voice, and someone who can put over their interpretation in a way that makes you listen.
And for a new listener, who's going to come and witness like astounding fireworks at the piano and all kinds of things, are there any kind of key things that they could start to listen for to sort of differentiate? Because I think for a lot of new listeners, it's just all wonderful. Like, it's all, as you said, the level is so high.
Well, of course, we're all dazzled by the pyrotechnics and the flashy things. I remember someone, I don't know which piece it was, but has the glissandos in, and someone came backstage and said, wow, when you went across the piano like this. I said, well, that was the easiest thing I've done all night. And in fact, a cleaner with a duster could go over and make exactly the same effect.
I could do that falling over my piano by accident.
Exactly, And actually what's really difficult and challenging for the pianist, as well as is color. It's pedaling, it's texture, it's nuance. And these things are very hard to quantify, because they're so subtle. They involve an eighth of a second difference between how much time you take before this note and another, that makes something either in bad taste or something that breaks your heart or something that's boring. Mm-hmm. So you've got that sort of ruler, if you like, of, bad taste breaks your heart and boring. So how are you on that scale? Most of that is to do, I think, with the combination of sound and time.
What do you hope audiences take away from a performance by Sir Stephen Hough?
I think you hope to change people's lives. I mean, that seems like a huge thing. But I think in the end, and it can be in a very, very small way, but in the end, if art doesn't do that, then it's doing it wrong. And I think it's true with every wonderful painting you see, every play. It should be life-changing. It should make us think about life and about ourselves in a different way.
Thank you so much for your time. So great to meet you.
Yeah, you too, Phil. Well, we'll keep in touch.
Would love that. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening or afternoon now for you.
Thank you. Goodbye for now.
Bye then.
That was Sir Stephen Hough, pianist, writer, and a host of other things, including mentor in residence for the Honens semifinalists and finalists. And be sure to catch his very special performance on October 22nd at 9 p.m., Bison Noir, Musica Caeda with Sir Stephen Hough. He'll be playing an incredible work by Frédéric Montpou at the Grotto at Contemporary Calgary. You're listening to Open Lid, the podcast by Honens. I'm pianist Philip Chu. Thanks for being here.
I think for me, when I'm most at ease, it is, yes, I love playing other people's music, but the feeling you get when I'm improvising or when I'm playing one of my own pieces is truly unique thing. And it's a feeling that can't be replicated when I play music by other people.
That's pianist Yuanfan Yang, our next 2025 Honens semifinalist. He's speaking about his love for the spontaneity of live performance and how every audience, every hall, and every acoustic renders a completely different emotional experience. And he's my next guest. How you doing today?
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I have to start behaving now, don't I?
You were born in Edinburgh to Chinese parents, right? And you studied, I think, largely in the UK. Does that sound about right so far?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
And you've, of course, by now performed all over the world. So the first question, and we don't start small here, do you feel like you belong to a specific musical culture or culture, and how do you navigate all of these different components?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, actually. Because I was born in Scotland, funnily enough, which is where Edinburgh is. I moved away from Edinburgh when I was very small. I moved to a city called Leeds, which is actually where I've spent most of my life. I guess it's always interesting for me because, having grown up in Britain and been immersed in the culture, but also deeply rooted in my Chinese heritage as well, I kind of feel like 50, and rather than thinking who the hell am I, what I'd much rather do is embrace both sides, because they both have so much interest to offer, and they're both such rich backgrounds to have and to delve into music, and I think it makes me enjoy life more, and it gives me a better sense, a better balance of humanity, as it were. So I'm very happy. It gives me a unique perspective, the kind of background that I have.
I'm Hong Kong born myself. We left when I was 3 and I've been in Canada since. So in a way I relate. We share this idea of coming from a faraway place and growing up somewhere else. And I for sure have wrestled in small and slightly bigger ways, about that. And I think your response is just it's a really beautiful, mature way to look at it, or at least performed. I don't know for sure, piano concerto that you wrote. And that's based entirely on Chinese sources, right? Would you like to speak a little bit about that? Like, how did you decide on that mythology?
Well, actually, it's based on a drama of the same name, The Wilderness, or alternative title, Savage Land, or it's called Yuanye, Yuanye in Chinese, by an acclaimed dramatist, Cao Yu. He's kind of known as the Shakespeare of China, and he wrote this amazing kind of drama, which I've seen an excerpt. I've read the English translation, and I've also seen the film in Chinese, and it was a story that really made a deep impression on me. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to somehow portray this drama through music? And that's, again, talking about my life, again, blending Western and Chinese cultures together. And that's what I wanted to do with this piece, blending elements of both Western and Chinese music into, a kind of I suppose, Western style written out piece, because it's for, the orchestra and piano and the concerto. Yeah.
And so you had that premiere there. Have you played that in the UK or elsewhere in Europe?
Have. The first time it was at my music school called Cheetham School of Music. Back in 2014, I was 17 at the time, and then we took this to several performances in China. I was very lucky. I managed to win a national grant from the Chinese Ministry of Culture, and that funded about 8 performances across several Chinese cities with the China National Orchestra of Theatre and Dance. So that was a huge honour, and culminating in a concert at the Forbidden Concert Hall in Beijing, which was recorded and on video.
That's probably what I watched then. Where you did a little improv at the end for a little boy that had come up. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, he just played a triad, I think, for you. I think they hired someone to lob you a softball, Yuanfan.
Right, what are you saying?
I'll improvise on anything. Who wants to come up?
Yeah.
Throw me your hardest tune. He comes up and plays like a C major chord.
The funny thing is, I find it easier when it's not being planned, so I don't think about it in advance. The thing about improvising is that the more you start thinking about it in advance and preparing, it turns less into an improvisation, more of an academic exercise. But the whole point of the improvisation thing is the spontaneity. I mean, if you want to write things down, do composing, which is what I also do, funnily enough.
I've watched these interviews with your former teachers, Murray McLaughlin, who speaks about your incredible warmth and your boundless extroverted energy and creativity. In fact, he says that it pours out of every pore of your being, and also that you're mature beyond all measure. Did you pay him to also say these things? I mean, it's really, it's incredible,
Yes, I think I'll tell the mafia to let his family go.
Well, that's a question for later in the interview. Also, Dr. Jeremy Pike speaks about your extraordinary knack for finding colors, as you talk about the composing hat that you have as well. And I'm glad that you've already touched on all 3 of them. Hey, if you had to give one of those up, if there was some sort of like devil's bargain, I don't know what you would get in exchange, but like if you had to give up one of those, do you know what you would give up? The composing, the improvising, or the playing?
Oh, I wouldn't want. I can give up anything else except those 3 things that you mentioned.
And when you started, the way your parents describe it, you just sat down and began finding your way?
Yeah, I think I just started picking out notes of the piano kind of randomly at a friend's birthday party. And I just realized that I could differentiate between rhythm and pitch. And I just started kind of plucking out tunes that I used to kind of sing and hear in a nursery just by accident. My friend's mum got very impressed and she phoned my mum and basically said, I had no idea your son was taking piano lessons. And when did this start? Who's his teacher? And my mum was like, what are you talking about? And I was the one who wanted to, kind of push my teacher to do more and more because I just enjoyed it so much. And I think when you're a really young child and you find something that you're really good at and, people praise you for it, it gives you a lot of, kind of motivation to continue doing it.
I love the word prodigious as an adjective. What is your feeling on the noun prodigy?
It's a great starting point, I think, because it means that you've got some kind of natural affinity towards it. I mean, I have friends who are kind of just like, for example, they might have a huge talent in drawing or art, or chess or dancing or singing or something like that. And for me, it was definitely music and the piano. But I think it's just very much a starting point. It's much more about how you develop, how you find yourself as an artist. And that's a word that I'm going to keep coming into. And I know that's a word that Honens takes very seriously as well. The complete artist and how we get there. Not just someone who can play the notes, but someone who has something meaningful to communicate and to say.
Were you one of those prodigies?
I don't know. I don't mind. I guess it's not necessarily a negative thing, but I think there is more to me than just someone who does things naturally. I think that whatever you do naturally, you want to create something that's very meaningful, something that moves people, or something that has something to say. And I think that's much more important than just being a good technician or someone who just wants to show off.
Is there any difference between like when you've played a Chopin ballade in a way that you just feel so like, damn, I'm pretty good, I'm prodigious, versus hearing one of your compositions played or you playing it and hearing a great reaction or finishing a great improvisation? Are those like similar reactions for you? And is the stress also similar?
Well, the thing is, when you're playing something like a Chopin ballad, you've got a responsibility because it's not entirely your own music. It's someone else's music. And it's your job to really get into the composer's shoes and mindset, as it were, which I think for me as a composer and an improviser, it gives me an extra kind of perspective because, you can see how the piece is put together. And this is something I've always talked about, this kind of mutual relationship between being a composer and being a pianist. You can, you're a performer, you can play, you could understand instruments and hear colors, and that helps you with composing music. And similarly, as a composer, you're writing with musicians in mind and you're thinking how dots will come onto a page and how someone's going to interpret it. And it's a very interesting thing. I think for me, when I'm most at ease, it is, yes, I love playing other people's music, but the feeling you get when I'm improvising or when I'm playing one of my own pieces is truly unique thing. And it's a feeling that can't be replicated when I play music by other people. And the most recent thing I felt was actually just a few days ago on 1st of August when I played my 4th piano concerto to a brand new concert hall near me in Bradford called Bradford Live, and we had 3,000 people in the audience, and the energy was just incredible.
I just want to clarify one thing. You said your 4th piano concerto.
Yeah, I've written 4 now. Yeah.
I really would want listeners to just kind of key in on that number perfectly.
Well, here's another one. Actually, 4.5, if we're going to be very pedantic about it.
What is it that draws you in particular, the space of improvisation, to that space of spontaneity?
Well, improvisation it's actually an art form that is as old as time, as it were.
Notation is such a short, it's a relatively short history, right, compared to the history of music.
Dare we say that music started out and evolutionized purely as improvisation before someone horribly invented the invention of notation and ruined everything for the rest of us?
When you open up a score, what are the first things you take note of? What are the first things you tend to focus on that you want to focus on? What are the things you try not to get bogged down by or tied down by?
I mean, the fundamental thing, really, and it's nothing exciting in some ways, is the first thing you've got to do is learn the notes. But yeah, learn the notes. That's the first thing. And then you're pretty much there, aren't you?
Maybe with your mind, yes.
No, and then, of course, then that's just a surface. And then you have to start getting deeper. And then you're starting to think what about between the notes and the messages that the composer's trying to convey. And then how you can turn, music written by someone else into your own artistic thing. But been faithful to the intentions that the composers wanted. And actually, within the last few months, I've discovered a new facet to kind of piano performance. And, because I'm quite a logical person, and I've always loved the academic side of everything and analyzing things as well. But one thing that I'm thinking about more and more these days is feelings, actually, and emotions that come up. And what do you feel like, and what kind of emotions and feelings is the composer trying to portray in particular passages, and how can you get that across so that the audience feels exactly the same as what you're trying to channel through? Because at the end of the day, I think music is feelings. It's a kind of communicative tool for emotions, and yeah, there's nothing that quite resonates with people more so than that. It becomes beyond just dots on the page. You want to feel inspired, and you want to feel moved. And I think one way to achieve that is to be able to have this kind of spontaneity that permeates through your entire music thinking and your artistry, and when you play other people's music.
Are there any particular mentors or teachers outside of the musical realm who've also had an influence on your art form?
There was a time I was really into literature, and I did a lot of reading back at school. There were some brilliant books that I read. The Great Gatsby, The Picture of Dorian Gray, a lot of Shakespeare. And I think there's lots of life lessons to learn from these things, and like philosophical, ideas of life and how you approach life. And I think that has actually come into my music making as well. I'm always fascinated with art as well. I can't draw or paint to save my life, actually. But how people use colors, and when you're thinking about music, when you look at art, and if you really zoom in, you can see every single stroke. But then you have to zoom out again, and you see this amazing picture that the artist paints, and you just think, how did that happen? How is zooming in and zooming out such a different experience?
This ties it perfectly with my question for you about your program for the first round of the semi-final, your recital that I would say pairs Debussy's Reflet dans l'eau from his book of Images with your waves from the three aquarelles. Tell us a little bit about the set, these three watercolors.
Yeah, so these were one of my first really serious works where I started to find an aspect of my compositional voice. And there was a time when I was really influenced by, yes, Debussy and Ravel did a lot of it, but it wasn't just their musical language. It's the idea of using music to portray and depict something. And I realized that audiences really enjoy having some kind of narrative to what's going on in the story. So yeah, there were three pieces that I wrote back then in my teenage years. Waves was the first one out of the set of the three aquarelles. So that was when I was 14. And then the next one that came was something called the Haunted Bell. And I had this idea where you had this one note, this haunted note that would sound 13 times, and then strange ghostly things would happen around. And it kind of builds to this devastating climax, as it were, before it all fades away into nothing, as if nothing ever happened. And then the sun sinks beyond the mountain ridge, which is actually the second piece in the set, but the last one to be written when I was all of 15 years old. Someone said to me that the harmonies remind them of Messiaen, but it's imagining this kind of very majestic scenery of beautiful hills and these mountains, and you can see the sun kind of, slowly, the grandeur of the light as the sun begins to sink.
Do you mind comparisons to other composers? Do you feel it's reductive, or do you think it's a compliment? Like, how do you feel when someone says, oh, it sounds reminiscent of Messiaen? Or
I think it's inevitable. How do we be original in music? How can we truly be ourselves? And it's like, well, I don't think you can really. I mean, if you think about it, from the very first day you listen to music, it's written by somebody else. From when you grow up, you're going to have favorite composers. Oh, there are music written by other people, and then you're going to start writing music yourself. Of course, it's going to be influenced somehow by other people's music because you've spent your entire life listening to other people's music. The only way you can truly be original as a composer is that you've never listened to a single note of music by anybody else before, and you start creating.
Correct. I mean, it's just like, it's this idea, I want to write.
This ancient proverb, it resonates a lot with me. It says, you are unique, just like everybody else in the world.
Is that a Chinese proverb?
I don't know. Yeah, it could be.
You should say, ancient Chinese proverb.
There's a wise philosopher in the mountains of Tibet once said to me, you are unique, just like everybody else.
We've now passed the serious portion of our conversation, Yuanfan.
Oh, have we?
If there was a composer, you've been asked this before, a composer that you would want to meet, living or dead?
I find all these one-word answers so challenging, actually. I'll tell you now, I'm very indecisive. And it probably goes into my music making and my artistry as well. And I go to a restaurant, I'll look at a menu and I'll stare at it for about 15 minutes. I have no idea what to order. And then I'll end up asking the waiter for the recommendation.
I wish restaurants would just like bring me my food. Like just bring me something. Just surprise me. You know, I hate having to choose.
You know, you just move there. Oh, I'm just parking. Order me the cheeseburger.
And so you've definitely avoided the answer on that one.
Yeah, I've used the powers of misdirection, didn't I?
You could play squash with them. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
I'd love to meet Liszt. I want to see what he was really like as a pianist, and I want to see him over. Let's see how good his technique really was.
Could he really sight read like everything everyone said he could? Like, could he really do all of those things?
And apparently, he would offer any of Beethoven's sonatas as an encore by memory, something. I'd love to see him.
Now that's prodigious. If you could commission a work from a living or dead composer, what would that be? Who would that be?
Oh. Just out of fun, I might commission someone like Einaudi, but I want him to write a work that doesn't sound like him at all, and just to see what he'd come up with.
If you could excise one piece of music, one piece of classical music from existence, what would it be?
Get rid of?
Yeah. Would never be heard again. It never existed. No one would ever know about it. No one would ever request it. No one would ever talk about it.
There's one concerto that I've never fallen in love with, and I've listened to it so many times, there must be a dozen times, and I've just still not, and it's the only work by this composer that I've not really got into, because he's one of my favourite composers. The Schumann Piano Concerto. Never falling in love with that work, I have to say. Everyone raves about it, but it doesn't move me at all.
What's a musical opinion you hold that would likely start an argument?
Okay, I've got one. Actually, I probably shouldn't say. There's a public platform with the PR side of me. It's kind of funny.
We should chat about that in Calgary when we meet. I would love to hear more about it. This is a very serious question now, Yuanfan. What do you hope audiences take away from one of your performances?
I hope they feel somewhat inspired and somewhat moved. And I think that's all we can really do as artists. I think that's probably one of the highest things that we can do as artists, to move, to inspire people. Yes, sometimes to challenge, sometimes to make you think as audience members, but, you know, ultimately to just elevate you, take you to a place, even if it's temporary, you know, before you have to go back to the horrors of everyday life again, into a better place, you know, where you can be really inspired and have your senses inspired, as it were. And yeah, that's all we can do as artists. And I think it's something that's really worth doing.
Thank you. And then one final question. Is that a picture of you with Jackie Chan that I saw?
Oh gosh, you have been doing some deep stalking. Yes, I met him once. I was with this family member and he brought me to this person, who brought me to that person, and we were just talking about some kind of projects. And then he was like, "Oh, I'm going to meet Jackie Chan this evening. Do you want to come along?" It was really nice, and he got very candid that night and just talking a bit about his life and everything. And he gave me a present as well. It was coming up to his 60th birthday, and they created 60 scarves, and I got given one of them. So I feel very honoured.
Do you ever wear it?
I just have to go and find where on earth it is.
Thank you. So this was the pleasure that I thought it was going to be.
Same as well. It's been an absolute delight to talk to. And
I didn't say how much pleasure it was. I just said it was the amount of pleasure I thought it was going to be.
Okay. I've decided to take it as a compliment. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time, Yuanfan. It's been such a pleasure to meet you, just to get to know you a little bit more.
Such a pleasure, Naya. You've changed your wording a bit.
Because that's the part that's going to get included in the podcast edit.
Okay.
That has to be very public friendly. Have a wonderful summer, and I look forward to hearing you in just a few months.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Phil. Yeah, look forward to meeting you. Bye-bye.
That was Honens semifinalist pianist Yuanfan Yang. You can catch both of his semifinal rounds on October 16th and 19th, where he'll be performing works by Frédéric Chopin, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, one of his own works, Iman Habibi, and Robert Schumann. You're listening to the Open Lid podcast by Honens. I'm Philip Chu. Thanks for being here.
Taking the risk and being in the moment. Like, I want them to feel that this music is alive, and to share the love that I feel for the piece, and that they feel it's a little bit the same way that I do.
That's pianist Ádám Balogh, who is thrilled to return to Calgary after participating in the last Honens Competition in 2022, where he took prize for the best performance of the commissioned work. He says, "My strategy is to have no strategy. I try to be well prepared and well rested before a concert. If I feel stressed, I try to do something to take it off my mind, like go-karting." Works well for him, he says. Let's hear more from him. Hey, hello, Ádám. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? I'm great. I'm so happy to be here.
I am great as well. You are probably the first victim, amazingly, of my poor time zone calculations. It's surprisingly difficult. It's amazing with Honens having competitors from around the world who find themselves at different parts of the world, in the summertime especially.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say the summertime, even with the scheduling, I was looking, the time change is also tricky to figure out with the time zones.
It's only about 2 years ago I moved to this other time zone, and I still get those calculations wrong. So it made perfect sense that this one I would definitely get wrong somehow. So, Ádám, let's talk about Honens. How are you feeling about it? Are you ready already? It's only a couple months away.
Yeah, I feel okay about it. I mean, I love all this repertoire, and I'm so glad. I was there 3 years ago, the last time I was there.
That's right.
And I'm really excited to be back. I mean, it was one of my favorite experiences, actually, the favorite competitions to have been to. And the repertoire is all my favorite pieces, and the people are super friendly. You are also super friendly, so you fit the Honens. You fit the you fit the Honens landscape. So yeah, I of course I'm practicing a lot and I'm stressed sometimes, but I think in terms of the timeline, it's going well.
Your experience with Honens in the past, you're one of the competitors, as you said, that was there 3 years ago. Maybe like top 2, 3 takeaways from your time. Like, what makes it special for you, Honens?
I think since there is so few competitors and already, everybody plays 2 rounds in the beginning, I think it gives you a much more comfortable chance to show yourself. Like, there's a greater picture you can create. And therefore, for me, it was a bit less stressful than other competitions where in the beginning you get like 20 minutes, and then they cut half the people. So, it's like a family and we all share what we can share. And of course there are winners as always and people who are not in the finals, but it really didn't matter to me. I mean, I enjoyed listening to many of so great colleagues to listen to. I think super friendly environment and this chance to show more of yourself than I think a usual competition allows. And I had an awesome host family, so it just felt like home, really.
What do you listen out for when you listen to other pianists?
For me, the most powerful experiences in a concert is always like the communication part, the part that is taking the risks of being at that moment and feeling that, here I can go a bit further, than I usually do. And then you go there. And so I try to listen for those moments in terms of, time, contrast in sound in between things. And of course, we all practice those moments and we know about them, but I think you can really tell when they allow themselves to go a bit further on the spot, and it's not always easy to do. So I try to listen to that, and the other thing I would say is in this world we are so focused on like short impulses of just paying attention for 10 seconds. So I guess the long idea, the long line, the payoff at the end of whatever happens in the beginning.
You singled out something which of course makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure any performer of any field would agree. Like, the only way we could take intelligent risks is only if we've prepared for them, right? Like, and any risk that doesn't have kind of a technical, like a solid foundation behind it, it's not really an intelligent or responsible risk to take, especially with our audience in mind, right?
So I strongly believe in the foundation being not just the piece itself, but your own sort of relationship with the instrument. I believe that in classical music, it's very easy to stray further and further into the sort of not the general relationship with the instrument, technically and whatever, but to the certain piece and certain passage and whatever. And for me, I try as much as I can to focus on the general relationship with the instrument. So then, if I want to take a risk or speed up or do something double tempo, then it doesn't depend on that if I practice that exact spot in that way, but that I have enough experience that I've done similar things with similar. And, if it comes, it comes. And I think it's a difficult balance because I think as soon as you calculate all the risks, like you don't have time. It's like improvising. You don't have time to really think about, okay, can I do this? You either are in a mind space where you do it, or you're either in a mind space where you don't do it. So it's just preparing all around and being ready for as much of the possible risks as you can, and then allowing yourself to get into that mind space of taking them.
Tell me a bit about that philosophy. I'm curious. I would dig just a little bit deeper. You focus more on your general relationship with the piano, which you feel gets lost sometimes.
Yeah, I had a big influence once. There's this Living the Classical Life. I'm sure you know this interview series where Trifonov is one of the early ones, but was with Trifonov, and then he shows that he's practicing like Tchaikovsky concerto beginning, like in all different characters, half tempo and like melodic, and then very rhythmic, and then so I try to do sort of that thing as well. And so what I mean is that generally I try to be about getting to the space where I'm feeling like I'm creating the music and not just, reconstructing what I've practiced about a passage or something like that.
That makes a lot of sense, and that aligns a lot with one particular quote I have of you that I want to get to. You say that retracing the steps to language is how we really understand what's going on rather than only looking at the final composition itself.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with this topic, so it's great. The connection to the language for me is important because I feel like the more we can connect to the aliveness of this of this musical language. When you go to the classics and you look at the phrases, if I were to do something like say something, my teacher always does this. Like one of my old teachers would do this. If I say, ta da 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 da, like everybody knows that's a musical phrase, and we understand the sort of structure of that. And by that logic, there's so many things that are ingrained already in us, and to have a relationship with that, and to recognize that not just okay, they were thinking of this and that, but to sort of be able to continue from that idea, and then the musical piece becomes something much more alive. It becomes like a poem, and then you are not thinking about the exact words. The exact words are important, but you're thinking about what they wanted to say with this poem, and then you think about the words in that context. And sometimes I think we can easily get into the habit of, okay, well, I sort of understand what it's about. I get it's about, trees, and it's about whatever. And then you focus on like, how do I pronounce this word? How much space do I leave before the next sentence? But then you can only make those choices really if you start from, okay, like what is this paragraph? What does it say to me? Okay, I'm sure I'm not the first person who thinks this way about music, so I don't want to sound like that. But for me, it's very important. And when I think about language and music, I just have this sense that we have to keep it alive. We have to relate to it like an alive language, and not something like people rehearsing how to do a speech in Latin or something. But we speak it, it changes, we listen to others, we see how it changes, we understand how that meaning changed, of that certain element of phrasing or something like that. And then we incorporate it next time maybe, and I find that super interesting.
I'm curious for you, to what degree, and this is kind of a hot topic, I'm curious to you to what degree the understanding of that composer's culture and the language of that culture, improves someone's performance of that music.
Yes, I get how you say it's a hot topic. Well, I mean, I think the sort of valuation of it is if it's good and bad, or it's better and worse. It's not necessary. Like,
Mhm.
certainly it's different. Like, somebody who grew up in a certain culture, I think, can probably relate differently. Like, Polish people Polish people relate to Chopin in a certain way, and
Mhm.
probably I relate to Bartók differently than somebody who grew up somewhere where, that's not your everyday listening experience and food, musical food. At the same time, I think it's, again, like a live language. Like, if people start to speak it, like now people start to speak English, and like the internet and whatever, it's just made it spread to so many different cultures, and sort of probably brought elements that are now incorporated in different places into English, and
Mhm.
it's changing, and it's okay. And people probably speak a different English in Hungary, and people probably speak a different English in Italy and in the US and in Canada, and one is not better than the other, but it could be interesting, to if you want to hear Italian speak, like Italian language, then maybe you go to Italy and you listen, and then you speak it as you want, and that's okay, So I try to leave out the quality, like the to say it's better or worse, but I'm
Mhm.
interested in both how somebody from the US would speak Italian and somebody from Italy would speak Italian.
I was curious because of your pedigree, not just pianistically, but culturally as well. Your studies, it looks like a large part taking place in Hungary as well. I was curious, like, how much Hungarian music would be programmed into your recitals.
Oh, well, it's a bit difficult because, of course, I love Bartók and
Mhm.
all this, but there's just so much good repertoire of
Mhm.
not just the standard repertoire, but I mean, if you go this early 20th century mixing pot of different influences, that's the most interesting part.
Mhm.
And yes, there is some Hungarian composers that fit into there, but I'm much more interested in discovering the other ones also. Because I guess it's same for somebody with normal other cultural things. Like, where you come from
Mhm.
is probably not the most interesting for yourself. Because you're used to it.
If I could offer you a ticket for any concert tonight for a pianist, who would you hope it would be?
It will either be Hamelin, uh, or Trifonov. Like,
Okay.
or probably, okay,
Ah,
three is probably too much. Okay, okay.
So tell us
Yes.
a little bit what you admire about these two.
But I do have to say also, if I said this too, I have to say Balogh as well. All three, I can
Very good.
equally love. So I mean Trifonov, because I feel that he's bringing back a little bit more this sort of risk-taking tradition of the 20th century pianists, and I just love that. Of course, he's always well prepared and whatever, but he never struck me as like extremely, clean or whatever. And
No,
I
but
love
that's
that.
amazing. It's amazing,
Yeah, I
right?
love
Because of
that.
it. Right.
Yes, and this is exactly what I mean by this language approach also, that I feel that he's so connected to the music, and because the priorities are in the right place, it's always clean enough, but it's never about that, and I love that.
I've never felt that he was careless or uncaring.
Yes, exactly. I love him, and Hamelin I love for so many reasons. I mean, all the repertoire, of course, and I just don't know how he has the time to like the amount of notes, and it's not about like technical stuff,
Mm.
but it's just to get into the mind and to have this great understanding of everything. I mean, he's one of my heroes, and as you probably saw in my repertoire, I play Matner,
Mhm,
and I
mhm,
love Matner, and
mhm.
that probably wouldn't have happened without him.
Right. And then Arkady Volodosh?
For him, I just never heard so much sound control and different colors real life by a pianist, like especially in Brahms. when I heard him live a couple of times, just the layering and intensity of the sound. I mean, I'm always a bit envious because, I'm a very small, small guy with tiny hands. I mean, not tiny, but like skinny hands. And when I look at him, I always feel like, he's hugging the piano and there's this amazing sound and like cushion of...
Would you be willing to share with us some of your principal teachers, and in particular, share with us one or two lessons that really stuck with you?
One thing I would say in the beginning is that I almost always had two teachers for like very long time. Just like a sort of usual thing in the Liszt Academy in Budapest, and so that already taught me something. Is that what I mentioned is there is no absolute truth, there's this truth and there's that truth and there's this approach and there's that approach. So one of my teachers, Gábor Eckhart, he was always about this Russian approach and a methodical practicing and sound production and whatever. And my other teacher at the time, Attila Németi, he was always, he was more about like how to do it on stage, like how to grab this moment, like this, what you mentioned, this here is where to leave time. Like you single out these 4 moments in this piece, like this is one of them. Like this is where you can do something, and how you build to that, and how you handle the silence in the audience. And sometimes, even things that we don't speak about publicly, like okay, here's this run. Like how do, even if I'm not so sure, like how do I make it sound like it's sure? Like how do you fake it if you if you don't know? And that since then, I mean, Dénes Várjon is one of the teachers I had after that, and I mean, I really love him. He's a Hungarian pianist. If somebody doesn't know, he's a good example for this sort of Hungarian school, which relies heavily, if it exists, Hungarian school, I'm not sure. It relies heavily on this language thing, and he's so good at that. Like, okay, what are you saying with this? Like, okay, but if this is la 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 la, but then this one has to, then that has to go the other way. Like it has to rhyme, it has to come like this, and so he really strengthened this thinking of music like language idea in me. And Zoltán Kocsis, of course, I've had luckily before he passed away, like a few lessons with him, and he's of course a greatly influential figure in Hungary. So I'm lucky that I could still meet him and play for him. And
what is your internal dialogue like on stage?
Ooh. Okay, that's an interesting question. On a good day, right? Well, or it depends. On a good day, I think it's about jumping always to the next thought, which I'm going to in my mind. Like, here's this phrase, and I'm thinking, okay, it's okay. Then there is going to be that thing, and I'm trying to think about, somehow visualize myself going there, and something abstract like this, and not talking or in my head. I mean, on a bad day, of course, it's like, okay, it's cold. My fingers are cold. Like, I hear the AC in the back.
What is your preparation going to look like a week or so, a few weeks leading up to Honens when we see you in Calgary?
A lot of, slow, relaxed playthroughs of stuff, like, taking it a bit apart, because I like to do that before concerts. Well, I try to do the thing which I said Trifonov did in that interview, which is try to take out some key themes and certain important spots and try to play them many different ways. Because I think one danger, if you're preparing so much for a concert or a competition, is that you're somehow stuck with the reproduction of this idea that you've been practicing so much that you forget how to do differently. So I try to avoid that, and in the end, I always try to focus on not doing that.
If there was a composer, living or dead, that you could meet, who would it be and why? I
mean, okay, I can be like very stereotypical, right, and just say Bartók. I can just say that. I would love to meet him.
I mean, no one has said Bartók. It's very unique that you would say it.
Well, yes, but I'm from Hungary, so what am I going to say?
Well, actually, what's funny is one of the first things you said was that, in some ways, like we're the least interested by our own culture, or at least the least like excited by at times. So actually, I think it's very beautiful.
By the same idea, I'm so heavily affected by what he did. And like, the Hungarian musical world felt paralyzed by by him for so many years, so that his effect is just so strong that I would be really interested to, meet him personally and see how he is. I mean, he was certainly a very interesting person.
If you could commission a piece from any composer, living or dead, who would it be and why? Or what would the piece be?
I mean, since I mentioned him, I have to say Hamelin, because I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing his name probably, because I know.
Oh, no, it's okay. As long as I can mispronounce your name, it's all right.
Okay, well, I would love if he would write something. I was looking at a bunch of my friends did the Clyburn when he wrote the toccata for it, and I learned it a little bit with them. I was also looking at that. So maybe, if he writes another toccata for me, I would love to play that.
If there was one piece of classical music that you could erase from existence, that no one would ever know was ever written and no one would ever ask for again, what would that be?
I don't know. I wouldn't erase anything. Is that a valid answer? I mean, I really wouldn't want to. Yeah, even if I don't like, or even if it's like problematic, I would rather look at it and decide.
My last question for you, Ádám. What do you hope audiences take away from one of your performances? What do you hope they'll take away from one of your concerts at Honens?
Well, I really hope that they feel connected all the way through to the music in a way that's, touches them. I mean, it's hard to phrase this because, of course, everybody wants this, but for me, this, what I've been talking about with you also, this taking the risk and being in the moment. Like, I want them to feel that this music is alive and to share the love that I feel for the piece, and that they feel it's a little bit the same way that I do. And yeah, I guess there's not too much more that you can ask for.
Ádám, I thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
I really enjoyed too, and I'm glad to talk to you, and I had a lot of fun. So
good.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye for now. And that was pianist Ádám Balogh, and you can catch his semifinal rounds on October 16th and 19th, where he'll be performing works by Claude Debussy, Béla Bartók, Nikolai Metner, and Robert Schumann. And that's it for today's episode of Open Lid by Honens. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery into music and artistry. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends and family. You can also explore upcoming events, the competition updates, and a whole lot more at honens.com. That's HONENS.com. Open Lid is hosted by me, pianist Philip Chu, with special thanks to Jeremy Clark and Yuanfan Financial for their support. Also a huge thanks to Simon McLeod. Incidentally, I'll be co-hosting the 2025 Honens live stream with Carmen Morin, so be sure to tune in for that. Until then, keep listening, keep discovering, keep playing, and most of all, keep that lid wide open.